Hi, I'm Keeley, also known as Kelly.
And I'm Feely, also known as Alex,
Welcome to our corner of the Shire,
where we will show you how to bring Middle Earth
into your daily life to keep you
a happy hobbit.
The growing season is really winding down out here in my Hobbit garden, and I think it's the perfect occasion to show you yet another Shire-tested food preservation technique. If you're lucky enough, you can get a harvest that is more food than you can eat in one sitting, although many hobbits would argue that that's a fantasy and not possible, but that was the case this year for cucumbers, or rather, more truthfully, I was growing cucumbers specifically for pickling. This is a cucumber plant with several female blossoms blooming. You can tell that they're female blossoms because they have a little mini cucumber at the end. The male blossoms look very similar, except without the cucumber, and if those blossoms are properly pollinated, they will start to grow. If you've never grown cucumbers before, I highly recommend you try. They do like to climb, so it's best to grow them in full sun on a fence line or with a trellis, or perhaps against a sunflower where they can climb up. And they shoot out little curling tendrils to hold on to things. And when they form their actual fruit, it's just so fun to watch it grow, and it does grow pretty quickly. Welcome to this episode of Happy Hobbit. Today I'm going to show you how to make some quick refrigerator dill pickles. Now I'm going to attempt to use the pickles that I have from the garden to make both chips that we can use on things like hamburgers and sandwiches, and also spears that are just so deliciously, delectably crunchable and perfect to bring on a Hobbit picnic. Here are some cucumbers that I grew out in the Hobbit garden. I'm really proud of how some of them turned out. That already looks like a pickle. But some of them, like this one, looks a little orcish. I found it growing right by the water line, and unfortunately I think the fruit had to scar to protect itself from rot. And then you get like ones like this. Like, that's a cucumber. You wouldn't think. But it didn't get much sunlight on it. It was really shaded by the leaves of the vine, so I'm guessing that's why it looks like Azog. I'm not sure. So as I've mentioned before, I live in a very busy, full hobbit hole, and getting time to film is always a struggle, and unfortunately I harvested these with the hopes that I'd have time to film this episode much sooner than I ended up having time to do it. So this cucumber and another one are a little worse for wear, and I just don't think they're safe to preserve. And that brings me to a good point, which is that making these refrigerator pickles is not the same as canning pickles. So these are pickles that will be ready to eat quite quickly, but you need to keep them in the refrigerator throughout and try to eat them within a month or two. One thing I don't understand, and maybe other gardeners can help me, is why are my cornichons growing in this shape? I know they're supposed to just be thin little squiggles, but like, what is happening? This almost looks like the duck or the goose from the Tales of the Hobbit trailer. Or this, like a ball? A cucumber ball? I'm so confused. After you wash off your cucumbers and use your thumb or a scrub brush to scrub off the little spines that they have, it's time to slice them down to size. I'm going to start with the cucumbers I'm hoping to turn into spears. And the first thing I'm going to do is measure, well actually, no. The first thing I'm going to do is cut off the booty. That can go to the chickens. and its head can go to the chickens. They love cucumbers. And then I'm going to measure to about there. I want them to be just below the height of the jar. So I'm going to go ahead and make a cut there. About the same height, the height that I want. Then you cut the cucumber in half and then into whatever size spears you want. I'm gonna make these into 3 sections. Oops, kind of juicy. Look at those seeds. One thing, I've been gardening for several years now, but one thing I'm still working on is learning the expertise of when to harvest, and perhaps that's why a lot of my cucumbers look orcish. So now I'm going to stuff them into the jar. Actually, I'm going to put the thick part down first. Let's see. I could probably fit a few more. I could definitely fit a few more spears in there. So I'm gonna take this one. Now this one's got some funky, it's got some funky skin right here, because again, these unfortunately are a little past their prime. But I'm gonna see what it looks like on the inside. I'm gonna cut it so that the skin's on the edge, the wonky skin. Oh, that smells so good. Looks beautiful inside. These ones I'm gonna do in half, because they're not quite as big. I don't know. I think the wonky skin bit's okay. Well, let's see. Yeah, the fruit itself looks fine. Okay, so now I'm going to add these to our jar. And it's okay to pack them in tightly. That's about as tight as it's gonna get, so that's great. Look! We've already got a whole jar of soon-to-be dill pickle spears. Now, the reason I decided to turn these into, like, pickled chips instead of little cornichon pickles is because of their bizarre sizes. So I'm just gonna cut off the top and the bottom and then slice them into fairly thin wedges. It's kind of thick, but he's gonna stay thick. And now I can use up the oddly shaped little ends from my spears by making them into chips as well. His weird gooseneck is gonna go to the chickens. These jars, by the way, should be washed out with warm soapy water ahead of time and then left to dry, but you don't have to be as intense about sanitation as you do have to be if you were actually canning the cucumbers. Wow, I'm gonna need a third jar. I have a much smaller jar that I'm gonna use to pack in the rest. Huh. The next step is to make the brine, also known as the pickle juice. And the base that I'm using for this is distilled white vinegar. To make the brine, you combine 1 and 1/4 cups of vinegar with 3 tablespoons of kosher salt and 2 tablespoons of sugar. Keep the mixture on high heat and stir with a whisk until everything is dissolved, and then add 2 cups of cold water. I am just cutting up some peeled cloves of garlic because my family and I love garlic, so we enjoy adding it to our pickles, but if you don't like garlic, you can skip this step. In here, I have a mixture of 2 tablespoons of coriander seeds and 1 tablespoon of mustard seeds. So I've mixed these seeds up as well as I can, and I'm going to add them as evenly as I can to the jars, because this is going to be a source of a lot of the seasoning. And when you're pickling, nothing has to be exact. Each jar will probably turn out with a really subtly different flavor, and that's part of the fun. I've also done recipes before where they have you do this step first, which I'm kind of seeing the benefit of that, but follow the recipe. And then you're also going to evenly distribute the garlic. So now I'm gonna start with 3 chunks of garlic in each jar. I'm still gonna have some garlic left over. And then we have some delicious fresh sprigs of dill. And these are what give it, obviously, that wonderful dill flavor. So I'm gonna go ahead and stuff several of these into each jar. Unfortunately, I did not grow this dill in my garden. I usually do, but we've had massive heat waves this summer and most of my dill bolted, which means it decided its life was over and it dedicated all of its energy to the second generation, which is its children, its seeds. It wasn't ready in time with the cucumbers, so that's why I couldn't really use homegrown dill. I'm gonna tuck this down. So I do recommend that you do this process before you put the cucumbers in the jar, which is what I've done in the past, but I don't know why I forewent my knowledge of previous experience in favor to the description in the recipe. See if I can get a few more in there. After all, they're supposed to be dill pickles. Not to be confused with the Rugrats character. Now comes the really fun part of adding the brine to your cucumbers and seasoning. And there you have it, your very own Shire-made dill pickles. I'm gonna go ahead and very carefully mix up the seasoning a little bit in each one. Look how cute they look. Like, if you made an adorable little jar like this and cut the cucumbers to this size, you could just put this in your knapsack and take it with you on your Hobbit picnic or adventure. Like, who doesn't want to crunch on a nice dill pickle when you're out on a walkabout? You can buy beautiful styled canning labels, but I often use this blue tape and then I just write on it the date and what's inside. That way, if I'm rummaging around in the larder or in the fridge and find something and I'm like, well, how old is this? I can't remember when I made it. It's right there. Just think they look so pretty. It's gorgeous. Now, the recipe says you can try them after 24 hours. I recommend waiting 5 days to a week to really let the flavors mold together. But you could always take one out and try it whenever you want and just see how the flavor changes. One thing I can promise you for sure is that your own homemade pickles will always taste better than those manufactured ones that you buy in, you know, the big stores in Mitchell Delving. So I encourage you to go out to your local market and get yourself some cucumbers if you're not growing your own, and make yourself some pickles. This is probably the most boring Happy Hobbit episode ever because there's not really any bloopers because I was trying to make it as fast as I could. But I just turned off the camera whenever I wasn't like doing something efficient, so I apologize. I hope it's not super boring. And I hope you're excited to try making your own pickles. By the way, the yucky ones, I'm gonna cut off the part that still feels firm and give that part to the chickens, and then the yucky bit is gonna go to the worms. We do have worm bins. So we try to keep, at least like when stuff in the garden like this rots, it's really devastating to me. But I console myself by knowing that at least the worms and the slugs and some of the snails can enjoy it. In fact, another really nice thing about having worm and slug bins is that when I find them where I don't want them, when I find slugs eating my plants, instead of just killing them or feeding them to our chickens, I pick them up and I tell them you're going to the land of plenty. And I put them in the compost bin where they can divide and multiply and do their job and compost. Look at Sauron coming back to life. Sorry, Ant.
Who wants some? Who wants some? You didn't eat your squash yesterday? Why didn't you like your squash? And now you're afraid of cucumbers? You girls. You girls. Come have some. Babies. So suspicious. Come on, Wayward. Wayward.